Easy to drive, open back studio headphones are a bit of a rare thing, at least up until you get into the planar regions. So when Ollo Audio came up with the S4 and the S4X models, they picked up quite a good and substantial user base who used them to work on some of the world's biggest records, and rightly so. The frequency response was pretty even, and the detail, especially in the upper mids, was really quite exceptional for something with such a small driver compared to a planar anyway. But today we're going to look at the new Ollo headphone. This is the S5X, and it's still open back and easy to drive, but there's a lot of changes from the S4X. So why don't you stick with us and we're going to go and take a look. Okay, let's just pause for a second. I need to clarify something. Ollo are describing these headphones as suitable for mixing immersive formats. They've gone out and they've measured immersive mix rooms, and this represents the frequency response of those rooms. I don't disagree with that, and I don't disagree that headphones can be part of the immersive mixing process using the renderer to go to binaural, but I'm firmly in the camp that believes it shouldn't be the only thing that you're doing. You should be checking immersive mixes on systems with multiple speakers in a room. And I'm not on my own with this. Certainly Universal Music, in their guidelines for delivering immersive content to them, specify that mixes should not be done solely on headphones. And I'm definitely of that camp. It should just be a tool in your immersive mixing arsenal. One of the main differences between S4X and S5X is the headband. On the S4X, it's a fixed band that goes over the top, and if you just tap it or you move your head too quickly, you can sometimes get a bit of a ringing that carries on into your ears. And also the points here, these are fixed and the fit's adjusted by the band moving here. This is sort of elasticated and split in the center, but I've got to be honest, I found that it put more pressure on the center rather than distributing it out. So it wasn't the most comfortable headband that I'd ever used. Now, the good news is that the S5X completely changes the design, and actually it's brilliant. The adjustment now is done with these rods at the side, and you can go up and down, and the suspension band is now fixed. This is just great. If you tap the headband, it doesn't ring, and it just feels a much more substantial headphone, and I can really get a lovely fit. It distributes the weight really evenly. Let's go and have a look at the graph and actually show you what the difference is tonally between the two. First up, let's bring up the S4X, and the two pink lines here are our guide for our target curve. Now, this is the above 1K region from the Harman 2018 study, which I think is really accurate, and it's basically just an even line going down here. I've listened to all the target curves that pretty much anyone's come up with, and I really think that for the studio, this is the one that we should be working to. It's the closest that I've found to speakers in a room that are even in the room, that measure flat in the room. So this is kind of taking account of the ear gain above 1K, and then it should just be even under that. And actually the original S4X does really well in this. Now, it does just come out of spec, sort of 100, 200 hertz, but it's good. It's an even tonal balance. The only exception here is this dip at about 7K. That definitely does exist, but it wasn't really getting in the way too much. So let's now compare to the S5X and go and pop that over. Now, at first, this doesn't look too different, but actually the changes here on the bottom end, sort of sub 1K down to 20 hertz, are a lot smoother. It's just one very gradual change. And then there's a bit more in the treble that's just a little bit more prominent. That's absolutely what you can hear in the headphones. There's just a little bit more treble detail. If we overlay over the original S4X, you can kind of just see that there. This 5 to 8K region is a little bit more prominent, and that dip doesn't dip quite as much. Now, this is good. This really is really good. Even if we look at something that's sort of a pretty close contender, something like the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS, then it doesn't match it as closely. And here in the 1 to 3K region, it dips quite a lot under and then just sits over the top in the treble. What this doesn't tell you is actually what the feel of the sound is. And one of the criticisms that I did have is that the bass just wasn't quite as tight as the other frequencies in the S4X. Well, that's absolutely been addressed in the S5X. Everything feels consistent and detailed and punchy all the way through the frequency bands. This isn't anything but a significant improvement. And it's not a redesign, it's not a reimagining. This is taking something that was really quite good and great for the money to start with, and just making it better. So it's still a dynamic driver, but it's still super easy to drive. It is 50 ohms, but don't let that put you off that it's a sort of a higher number than a lot of the planars and things, because the sensitivity on these is just ridiculous. You can put them on a laptop, you can put them on a budget interface, and these are going to sound great at a good volume. They're just really forgiving, and without doing a load of work, you've got something that's pretty reliable. Now, I've done a EQ curve for this, and if I just pop this up, and you can find those EQ points in the comments for the video on YouTube that we've got, you can see here we've got an absolutely beautiful curve right down the middle, right up to this 6-7K dip. It does just dip down a bit and then really smoothly into the treble. Just knock off the untreated one there. That's cracking. That is absolutely cracking. I can't push this anymore without really, it's quite a tight band on the EQ, and it doesn't want to go anymore without just overdoing it. So that is where I'm going to settle on it. But that's great. That really is great. Let's address soundstage for a second, or sort of the perceived stereo width of the signal. It's certainly not as wide as something expansive like the headphones or Sennheiser's HD800S, but it is definitely a step above the type of closebacks that you normally find in the studio, the Sony 7506, AKG's K371, those type of headphones. It's definitely wider and more present. You are still going to want to use crossfeed if you want to get the best translation, and the best software crossfeed that I have found is the standard mode of Can Opener by Goodhertz. It's definitely my one to pick, and the only one that I've found that doesn't mash up transients. Even though it's not super wide, it's still binaural presentation, and for the translation to really hit, you want to make sure that you're getting that monitor feed in each ear, so you can really just nail your mixes while you're working on headphones. I can't say that one enough, and I say it on every video, but you need to be using crossfeed. Not using it means you're not hearing the same thing that's going to come out of speakers. This is just an amazing headphone for mixing on the go, taking it. I mean, obviously it's still an open back, even with these sort of grills. Don't let it fool you that it's sort of semi-open or something. It's an open back headphone. You don't want to be using this on the plane, but you do want to be using this out and about, hotel rooms, things like that. You haven't got to take another amp, and you haven't got to worry about what you're plugging into. It's always going to sound consistently the same. The S5X now folds flat for travel, and they come with their own travel zip-up bag. The pads are slightly wider than the S4X, but they still come with the same sort of microfiber finish that goes against your skin. There's also absolutely no problem with the base seal if you do wear glasses like me. The cable is also very similar to the S4X, with a external braid that goes up to the split, and then two PVC jackets go up to the connectors. The connectors now fit into the side of the cups rather than just touching the edge as they did on the previous models. Now, obviously, being a dynamic, it doesn't have the detail level that something like a planar would do. So if you sort of weighing up different things, you could say the Hi-Fi Man Edition XS is a little bit more money, but it's got more detail. However, it's a hell of a lot harder to drive. So it's that whole thing. You've got to have an amp. You've got to go out and make sure that you've got that amp with you. If you're traveling with these, you just don't worry. It's just plug it in and go, and it's fine. So on that basis, if you just want a pair for traveling that are pretty good without any EQ, stick the EQ on. It's really reliable for mixing all throughout the frequency band, really. Then these are spot on. I'm not entirely sure of the final price on them. I think it's around 440 euros, 450 euros. So hopefully that's going to equate out to about £400 UK. I think at 400 quid, this is a good mix headphone. If your priority is having something that you can just travel with, plug in, not want to worry about taking an amp with you, then these are a brilliant choice. They're not too heavy. They're about 400 grams. There are the comfort factors there. The headband is spot on. The fit, the leveling, everything. If you're in the UK and you do want to get a set of these, then we should have a delivery arriving shortly. So please hit us up, scanproaudio at scan.co.uk, and we can get back to you with some special bundles and deals with it. I think it's a great outing from Ollo, and it really shows that they listen to the user base and they've taken the feedback and then just made something that improves on every single aspect of the design. It's just a great, easy to drive, dynamic headphone. If you've got any other questions, please hit us up. Have you used the S4X? Were you expecting anything else? Have they missed anything out? Please let us know in the comments. Otherwise, don't forget to give us a subscribe, and we'll see you for another video again soon.